Hey, I'm Kathy from Applique Corner, and today we're going to be making some bunny slippers, and I'm really excited to share this project with you. It's one of the easiest in the hoop projects that I've done. They stitch together very quickly, and they're really super cute, so I know you're going to love them. We will talk about some fabrics and talk about some materials that I use, and then I'll walk you through the steps on the embroidery machine, and then we'll finish the slippers on the sewing machine. But I want to tell you that the slippers come in sizes for dolls, and this is one of the name brand dolls, but we also have off-brand dolls in our home as well, and they're all the 18-inch dolls. And the doll slippers should fit any of the 18-inch dolls that your daughters or granddaughters or customers may have. The slippers also come in children's sizes and toddler sizes and also adult sizes. And I want to walk through some of the fabrics with you now. What I like to use on the bottom of the slipper is a material that has some knobby little rubber grips on it, and this is called Grip Stop, I believe, is some brands, but you can pick this up at the fabric store or online. And it's bumpy. It's just got some rubber little knobs on it. It's the kind of thing that you would find on toddler pajamas or baby pajamas, on the feet of those pajamas. Now this is my favorite fabric. This is a Sherpa white fabric. This is just a faux fur. It looks thick and it's not see-through. This is the fabric that I used on all of the samples that you see here. But it's super thin. You're still able to stitch through several layers of this fabric. Now the package or the bolt, the end of the bolt, the instructions say to dry clean this fabric. So you might want to pay attention. If you want to be able to wash these in a washer and dryer, you might want to pay attention to the fabrics that you use. Now I don't mind dry cleaning something or cleaning with damp cloth or that sort of thing, but just pay attention to your fabric instructions. This is another great option. This is a swirl fabric, a swirl fur was the name. Now all of these names are on our Facebook page, on the Applique Corner Fanatics Facebook page, and on our regular Facebook page from Applique Corner as well. But if you'll notice the difference, this looks white, has these cute little swirls, and it's really, really pretty. It is a little bit see-through. You can see my hand going through it. But next to this one, it looks a little bit bluer white than this white. But still another great option. These are the same fabrics that we use, by the way, in the bunny lovey designs and the lamb lovey designs. Now this fabric I also picked up. This is a quatrefold pattern. It's another faux fur and would be thin enough that you could stitch through several layers, but I want you to notice that you might see through some of the pattern, but because this is going to be doubled layered, you're not going to really see all the way through it, so it would be okay. Both the swirl and this pattern would be okay in this project. And the last one that I'll share with you, this is more of a sort of like a chevron pattern, and this is the one I did a sample of the bunny lovey with this pattern as well, but it's just got some chevron lines through it. Still thin enough to stitch with, and because it's going to be double layered, you really won't see through. But you don't want to use a fur that is super thick that your machine won't go through. So those are the fabrics that I've chosen. You'll also want to pick a cute cotton. You could use flannel or fleece, something for the ears, some just your choice of fabric. I will say that these slippers can be stitched up in a nice fleece or something. You don't have to use a fur, but let's meet at the machine and I'll show you just how easy they are to stitch up. The first embroidery step that I will stitch through for you, the file is the ears. Now, if you want to save time, you can combine different files in one large hoop if you have a hoop large enough, and do all 4 ears at a time for a pair of slippers. But for the sake of today's video, I will stitch a pair of ears, and the first step is going to be the placement step for the ear outline. The machine has stitched the first step, which was the placement line for a pair of ears. Now what I want to do is I want to put both fabrics down right sides together and stitch the ears together. Now it doesn't matter which fabric you place on the bottom or which fabric you place on top, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my fur fabric on the bottom and my cotton fabric. Actually, I'm going to do it this way so that it'll catch some of those pretty flowers. I will put the cotton on the top so the presser foot doesn't have to glide over that fur, so I don't have to worry about it one bit. It actually glides over it nicely, but I won't have to worry about it. Okay, now it's just going to stitch these two fabrics together, and then we're going to turn the ears right side out. After that one simple stitch, stitching the two fabrics together, you are completely done with part one, the ears. And what we'll do is we'll take it to our workstation and turn the ears right side out. And I usually don't take the hoop out, but I did for the video, but you can just slide your fabric right under the presser foot if you want. I've brought the ears to my workstation. I'm going to cut out the ears, but before I do, you might notice that I used just a mesh stabilizer. You can use a mesh stabilizer and cut it away. You can use a tearaway. You could even use a water-soluble if you wish. It's really just preference, and my preference is to just stitch it very quickly on the stabilizer and then cut it out. And I don't mind, this is very soft mesh. I don't mind the ears having the mesh inside of them. And you'll also notice I used a much larger hoop than is actually needed for the purpose of the video, so you could see it more clearly. So you wouldn't necessarily need to waste that much stabilizer, but I've already cut a piece away so you can see it more clearly. But all we're going to do is cut the ears out, and I'm going to leave about 1/4 of an inch. You could leave maybe up to 1/8 of an inch, but you want to leave a little bit of fabric so that it doesn't come apart. The stitching is nice and close together. It's not going to come apart unless somebody tries to rip it. But cut your ears just below the stitch line. Cut off that excess. And then what you always want to do on curves, either outside curves or inside curves, do little notches around those curves so you'll get a much cleaner turn. And we'll do that again on the top of the bunny. But then you can just start by turning this right side out. And then you can get a pencil or a chopstick or one of the little turning tools and turn the ears right side out. And it just takes just a second. And I'll tell you, on the doll size, it was a little bit tricky. 3 of the ears turned very, very quickly in a matter of seconds. But there was one ear for the pair of doll slipper samples, that I just about wanted to throw out the window. But what you'll do, if you will leave more of the fabric on either side that is not stitched together, so you almost have 2 little tabs on the tiny ear pieces, it'll give you something to turn, something to grab onto to turn a little bit better. So here's one ear, and we'll just do the other very quickly. But trimming around those curves and giving those notches really helps for a clean. And I'll do this one this way so you can see what I'm talking about. If you're doing a newborn size or a doll size or something like that, just leave something to hold on to, and then you can always trim this away so your ears, you know, will match up in this case, because I've got one short and one long. But see how much easier? I meant to show you that in the first one, and I actually forgot. So it's like having two little handles on either side. Okay, there we go. And then for this case, because I left a little tail on this one and not this one, all I'm going to do is trim and make sure they're the same size. Okay, you're done with ears for now. I will say this. You can do this. This isn't required. But if you want to have a little hand, like a little whip stitch, or take this to your machine and stitch the ears closed like this. I believe on the tutorial, well, I know on the tutorial we did, the written tutorial, it like pinches and folds them up either way. My preferred method is to pinch the bottom like that, but you can also do this while you're taping them in place for your embroidery file. So it's not necessary, but if you'd like to put a little tack or a little whip stitch there, you certainly may. So the ears are ready. Now we're going to stitch the top piece for the slipper itself, and if you'll join me at the machine, I'll show you just how easy that is. We're on part 2, which is the top part of the slipper, and I brought my hoop with the stabilizer to my machine, and I've stitched the first step, which is just the placement step for the top side of the slipper. And I'm going to place my fabric. I'm going to try to balance that there. I usually don't take the hoop out that often, but I'm going to place the fabric in my hoop, and I just cut a piece large enough to cover the design itself. And then I'm going to slip a piece of water-soluble stabilizer, the topper, on top of this fur. And I will tell you that I had no problems whatsoever with my presser foot going over the fur. I did several samples without the water-soluble stabilizer, and I also on some of them put just a tiny piece just for the face, just for the little eyes and nose. But just for the purpose of the video, and I don't want you to have any trouble, and just because my machine did just fine, I don't want you to have any trouble. So I'm placing a piece of water-soluble stabilizer over the entire piece of fur. And now it's going to stitch this fur down. It's going to do the outline of the top piece. Okay, you saw me walking my hands around and holding this water-soluble stabilizer. Let me give you a little tip. If you want to moisten the corners or moisten any part of it to hold it down or tape it down, or you can pin, if you're really careful, know your machine well and know the design, you can pin outside the design area, far away from the needles and the presser foot. But I felt fine just holding it. I don't want to encourage you to get your your fingers anywhere close to the needle. So if you want to use chopsticks or something like that, that's always a good idea. The next step for me, I need to rethread the machine, and we're going to stitch the eyes and the nose for the little face. And for your single needle machines, you always want to remember when you're changing the thread to pull the thread down and out. You can unthread it from the needle so you don't bend your needle, but snip it at the spool, at the base of the spool, or up here at the top of the machine, and then rethread that way. You never want to pull the thread backwards through your machine because you can mess up the settings and the tension there. So, okay, now we're ready to stitch the little eyes. Okay, we have stitched the eyes and the little pink nose, and now I'm going to stitch a placement stitch for the ears and then show you how to tape the ears into place so that they're facing the right way when you open up the slipper when you're done. Okay, this is just the placement stitch, and it's going to stitch right here along the top of the head and the opening of the slipper. Once you've done a pair of these, you can skip that step. All it does is show you how wide you have, what size space you have to tape the ears down. And now I'm gonna get my ears and I'll bring them to the machine so that maybe you can see on this camera how I tape them down. Okay, you'll notice that I've got the ears taped in place. I'm using some Embroidery Perfection tape, and I have guaranteed that I have about 1/4 of an inch of the bottom of the ear below the stitch line, because it's going to stitch right here on that placement line. What I've also done is I've pinched the bottom of each ear, and I have put them side by side. Now your tendency may be to make a V, but actually you don't have to do that, and if you don't do it correctly, you turn it inside out and your ears are facing in instead of out. So you can put them side by side or one on top of the other, that sort of thing, but I like to put a little bit of a pinch because it just gives that cute little crease right there. So I'm gonna return my hoop, attach my hoop to my machine, and just stitch right across the ears. Okay, now we're going to go get the other, the bottom piece of fur for the top of our slipper, and I'll show you what to do with that. I removed the Embroidery Perfection tape, and I brought my second piece of fabric to the machine. Now you can slide it up under, or you can place it here beforehand, either way. And I'm going to attach the hoop back to the machine, and you might be thinking, oh dear, what about the ears? This is the part where I'll tell you don't have to worry about the ears at all. The next part of the file sews only the innermost U where you slip your foot in. So it is, I'll slide it back out and show you, it's going to stitch down here, and it's not going to be near the ears, so you don't have to worry about your presser foot or your machine or anything like that. So rest easy. Was easy enough, and it catches just that bottom part of the ears that was already stitched flat for you. So that's all that it does. Now we'll take it to our workstation and we will cut this piece out. We're almost done. Okay, the next little thing that I'll do is just a little suggestion. It's not necessary, but I like to cut from the back side where the stabilizer is, because that's where my line is. So I don't want to have to flip the fabric back and forth to see where I'm supposed to cut. So I'm just going to put a couple of pins. These won't stay here or anything. As you can tell, these fabric pieces are not precise. They're not exact pattern pieces or anything like that. If you know me well enough, you know I don't measure anything. The only time I do anything really precise is when I'm making files for you, or something like that, or measurements for you for a tutorial. So I have pins here, and I actually have one inside the design and one outside, which is kind of funny. But what I want to do is I want to trim right here. Let me see if I can hold it up so you can see it a little bit better. Here is the outside line on the stabilizer, and on your top fabric, your facial fabric for your slipper. So you're going to cut through both layers, and you're just trimming the top piece, which is going to be sewn to the sole of the slipper. Okay? And this, and you can cut away some of the stabilizer if you want. It might be easier for you to see if I do that. The fabric wants to curl a little bit on you when you're trimming. So sometimes I've trimmed and I thought I got the bottom piece of fur, and then I laid it flat and there was this crazy shape sticking out, and that's okay. But just watch for the fabric to curl as you're trimming around. Make sure your ears, my ears are inside, so if you want, you can fold those ears back and make sure that they are out of the way, so you don't trim the tip of your ears while you're trimming the part down here where the nose is, where I guess the bunny's mouth would be, because the ears are sticking out down there. Okay, here's the part where I'm going to feel and make sure that those ears, and we'll open it up and show you what you can do just to make sure. Okay, right here, if you want, I knew they were out of the way, but you can fold them back, or you can fold them in, or, you know, spread them apart or something like that. Just make sure you don't trim make sure you don't trim the ears. So, and I've got a little piece I was probably nervous when I was going around. There we go. I'm leaving, actually I need to trim a little bit more here. I'm leaving just about 1/4 of an inch all the way around, because you're going to stitch on the stitch line that the embroidery file provides for you. So you can just leave, there we go, 1/4 of an inch all the way around. Now you need to trim the inside of this innermost U. And again, just leaving about 1/4 of an inch, going around that U shape. And you might run into the seam allowance for the bottom of the ears, and that's okay. There may be a little bit of material here from the ears that are already stitched in, and it's okay to trim a little bit of that away. Now remember, for all curves, especially this innermost curve right here, you want to put just a few notches. And in this sample, I'm just leaving this stabilizer, this little mesh stabilizer. It's really thin. I'm not going to be able to feel it in the slipper or anything. But you could use tearaway and just tear it off. And I know you all know this, but tearaway stabilizer is just that. When you're removing tearaway stabilizer, you want to tear it away from the stitches and not towards the stitches, or you can rip your stitches apart. So now at this point, you can remove the water-soluble stabilizer now if you wish. You can wait until the end if you would like to, but it's just going to pull away. I'll remove it now and just show you. It's going to pull right away. That way in the video it might be a little bit easier to see, because this is pretty shiny in a video tutorial with all the lights. want to stick to my hands. Okay. Now, this next little part, if you were to have a question, we've received just a few questions. If you were to have a question, this might be where you question what to do next, okay? Right now the bunny is wrong sides out, okay? The face is here, the ears are here, it's facing me, okay? Now, if you can turn the bunny right sides out, all I did was fold it. Now you've got furry side, furry top side, okay? Furry bottom side. This is going to be the inside of the slipper. This is obviously the top of the slipper. All you want to do is get these seams that we stitch the top to the bottom and that innermost U on the embroidery machine. You're going to put these seams together, make sure they line up, and then you're going to lay the bottom pieces and the top pieces right sides together. You've got fur and fur, okay? Place a couple of pins if you use pins on your sewing machine. Some of you do not, and that's okay too. You can use clips. I make some really nice clips that I have some. Today I've just got the pins out already, so I'll use those. And you're just going to stitch a line, just a straight line. You want to remember to do some little back stitching and lock your stitches into place, but it's really going to be stitched into the other part of the shoe. You can do this by hand. It's not a requirement that you have a sewing machine, but I have a sewing machine set up, and it's so quick and easy. It'll take you about 3 seconds to stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and this is the heel is what we're gonna make. I have the machine stitch selected at a straight stitch, and what I want to do is stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance here on the heel. And this sews the top and bottom pieces, the sides together to form the heel. And you'll notice that I have put a piece of tearaway stabilizer here. I wouldn't have had any problems. I've done, gosh, probably about 8 of these samples, and I haven't had any problems with the fur because you've got right sides together. Feeding over the feed dogs, but a nice little tip is, and we also included this in the written instructions, that you can place a piece of stabilizer to glide over the feed dogs if you wish. So now I'm ready to stitch, and I've taken my shoes off. You know I'm getting serious when I take my shoes off. I can't stitch on a sewing machine unless I'm barefoot. But you can do just a little back stitch. Again, it's more than likely you're going to just catch this in the slipper itself, so it's not going to be a problem, but I'm going to do one just in case. And then we're going to stitch a straight stitch all the way across to the other side on this short little amount. And this little fur wants to stretch a little bit, so I'm just going to push it right back where it belongs. Okay, and that is it. Let me show you. Okay, and then when you fold your, I'm folding it the wrong way. When you fold your little bunny down, that forms the heel. Okay. All right, now we're going to set this part aside. We're going to stitch the sole together, which takes just a few seconds, and then we'll pin the top to the bottom, stitch around, and we're done. All right, we're on our 3rd embroidery file, and this is the final step for the embroidery and making the 3 parts of the slipper. This is the bottom of the sole, and I have stitched the placement step onto a piece of tearaway stabilizer. I've switched over stabilizers. You can use either. Again, I have used the mesh and I've just trimmed it away. and pulled it off, or just, but whatever you want to use is fine. You can use water soluble or anything that you wish or you're comfortable with. Now this part, the very important step is, this time the fabric is going to be right sides out and wrong sides together. We're just based stitching, and this is how, you're not going to turn this right side out. It's going to stitch right side out. And you can stitch with the bumpy, this is your grippy, your bottom. You can stitch it on the bottom. You can stitch the fur up if you wish. You can put a piece of the water-soluble topper stabilizer there, or I'm just going to quickly stitch. You can put a piece of water-soluble stabilizer here if you're afraid that your machine won't glide over these little bumpies. I've done it several times and it does just fine. So hopefully it will for the video, and I'll just use my fingers just to move along just a little bit. But we want to, there we go, hoops attached, and we'll stitch both of these steps, the sole step and the ear step. They take like less than a minute to stitch. It stitches very quickly. It's seeming like a little bit longer on the video. And then the top piece of the slipper, the head and the face and everything, it's just a couple of minutes. So all of this is very quick. You should be able to make a complete pair of slippers. I can make them in less than an hour. So if you were wondering how long it takes. Okay. Okay, that is it. Our bottom piece is stitched together, and we just want to trim it away. I've removed the bottom piece of the sole of a slipper from the hoop, and I trimmed away some of the stabilizer just for the purpose of the video, but I want to turn it over, and because this is stitched all together, there's no need to pin or anything. When you go to trim, the innermost line is your stitch line. Now that is where these two pieces are basted together, and that is where you're going to stitch the top part to the bottom part and complete the slipper. So to trim, you want to use this outer stitch line all the way around, which is approximately 1/4 of an inch all the way around. So I will trim the sole out now, and it just takes a couple of seconds. Just make sure that you're trimming both fabrics. Okay. Now, that's the sole of your slipper. And now what I'm going to do is I will remove this tearaway stabilizer. And then it will just pull away the outer piece, and the stitches remain, so don't be alarmed. It actually might get hung. Okay. There's one or two tiny little stubborn pieces. And you can just remove those. This part, I think I'll try to get them all for the, but this is just a sample and really won't be worn. But you want to make sure that you remove all of the pieces of the stabilizer at this point. If you use something that isn't really soft and comfortable, because a child's or an adult's toes or feet or heel, you know, maybe touching this part. So you want it to be soft all the way around. And let me also say a little stray string there. And fur is flying. You're not having fun unless fur is flying everywhere. But let me pause for just a minute. I'm gonna reach out of the camera for just a second and say, if you're making these for children and you want them, or adults, and you want them to be a little bit more comfortable, and you're comfortable stitching this on your machine, they make some very, very thin flexible foam products. I think this is called Flex Foam. It's just a super thin foam that you can get at your fabric store. So you might want to consider that if you want just a little bit added cushion. But this is not a super thick slipper. This is just a comfy, fun, lightweight slipper to wear around the house or that sort of thing. So we are ready, and what you want to do at this point is you want to take your grippy fabric and your bunny, and I'm going to grab the pins. And what you're going to do is you're going to turn the bunny, face down, okay? Not face up, but face down, okay? I'm going to grab the pins. You're obviously going to put the bunny face towards the front of the sole and the heel towards the back of the sole or the heel of the sole. Now, you may be wondering what to do with these ears. You can pull the ears out. As long as the face is on the bottom, you can pull the ears out of your way. It's not going to be a problem at all. So I will grab the pins and show you how to pin this together, and we are just seconds away from having a completed slipper. Okay, make sure you've got the eyes even and the nose pointed towards the furthermost tip of the front of the sole, okay? And that was, again, the grippy side up. Y'all may have seen, I think it was probably my 5th or 6th sample pair that I was stitching together, and it was 3 a.m. and I had no sleep, and I stitched one backwards. And I had to laugh at myself because all I had been doing was bunnies for days. So that's what you get when you have like 2 or 3 hours of sleep. Okay, all I'm going to do is I'm going around. I pinned the center back of the heel towards the most center point of the heel of the sole. And I'm going to walk around. You're going to have a tiny bit of excess fabric on the top, and that's to be expected because that top of the slipper is going to raise up and it's going to give you room for your foot to actually fit in. But because the bottom piece is basted together, you only have one, piece of fabric because it's together. There's really 2 pieces of fabric, but you've got one to worry about, and then you've got 2 loose pieces. So you're just making sure that all raw edges meet up perfectly. And I'm pinching them firmly with my thumb and forefinger and putting the edges together and pinning. And the way that I am pinning these is the way that I like to stitch them. And it's pins going inside towards the center of the bunny. If you think of a clock, how the numbers on the clock or the notches on the clock go, they're all going to point in, and that's how I'm pinning it together. I just prefer that method. Okay, I can pin these much more quickly off camera than I can on camera, trying to tell you what I'm doing. Okay, I think this will be the last pin that I need. And then I will grab, this time, I am going to grab a piece of stabilizer. I'm going to get some tearaway stabilizer and place it under the bunny, and we'll take it to the machine and stitch it together, and then we're done. I have brought the pinned slipper to the machine. I have the sole on the bottom, and the top piece is still on the top. Remember, I pulled the ears out of the way, and here's the heel. So all I'm doing is just flattening as I go. I'm going to go really slowly, but they go very quickly. They stitch together very quickly, but I'm going to go slowly and walk you through. We're going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance around the edge, just in the circle, and then I'm going to pull the pins out as I go. Just straight stitch, and I do want to make sure that I back stitch this time. And if you want added security, you can go around twice if you wish. It's helpful to use colored pins, and it's also helpful at this stage to use long pins. You don't want to have a mistake. Just go slowly. If you're not used to stitching around curves, leave your machine in needle down position, and you can raise the presser foot. You can pivot if you need to. Okay, now I'm going to press the heel in the other direction out of my way. And the ears are going to be moved to the other side as well. Pulling pins as I go. They're trying to hide under the fur. And even though this fur is shedding a little bit on the edges, it's not going to shed like that once you get it stitched together. I can feel the edges of the raw edges of the material. Just go as slow or as quickly as you're comfortable with doing so. This can be done by hand. I personally wouldn't want to do it by hand just because I have machines here in the studio, but you can certainly do it by hand. I would stitch maybe even 2 or 3 times around for security, maybe double up on your thread, but it's not out of the question to do these by hand at all. So a sewing machine is not required, but it sure makes life easier. I'm back all the way around to my starting position. I'm just going to do a couple of back stitches. Okay. I'm removing the tearaway stabilizer. I'll take it to my workstation to remove this inner piece, and then we'll turn the bunny right side out. I'm going to completely remove the tearaway stabilizer, and then the only thing to do is to turn the slipper right side out. Okay. And as you can see how cute the bottom looks, there's your grippy fabric. And there is your completed slipper. Now, you might notice, I want to talk you through a few things. It is just as cute as it can be, just as it is, But let me show you a few things that I like to do. This fur is really cute and really furry. So all I'm doing is, if you want to photograph these for gift giving, or you might want to sell a finished product or that sort of thing, I am moving away this fur just a little bit, and then I'm going to place it down on the table, and I'm going to trim just a little bit of fur right around the nose and right around the eye area, and then we're going to talk about some optional steps that you might want to add to your bunny slippers. I'm not going to trim too much. You don't want any bald spots in the fur. I'm just going to trim just a little bit. Okay. We've got some fur going everywhere. Okay. Now, let me show you a few things that I found helpful, or you might find helpful. When you get to the part of the sole, if you're making these for yourself or you're making them for your child or grandchild, you might want to measure their foot, either place their foot directly on the sole that you've made and then mark or pin around. You could use a disappearing ink or water-soluble ink or something like that, or just make pins or a pencil mark, whatever you wish. If you're making someone who doesn't live nearby, you can just take measurements over the phone and just make sure that the measurements line up to the sizes that we've offered in the files. And that's something that I just wanted to mention if you need any help making sizes. Now, I've also thought of a couple of things for the baby or infant sizes. They make this really, really cute elastic. This is ruffled elastic, and it comes in many different colors, and here it is in white. And if you wanted to, you could stitch it into the opening. You could do it before or after. This is very, very soft, so it wouldn't be bothersome if you wanted to do it after the fact and just tack it down on either side. It also might be really cute to just tie ribbons, especially on the infant sizes, newborn sizes, to tie a little piece of ribbon and have a little bow around the child's foot, maybe for some pictures or something like that. And then also let me mention that you can avoid the embroidery steps altogether if you wish. You can stitch the slippers, the eyes, by hand. You can use some embroidery thread or several strands of your regular sewing thread. They also excuse me, they also make buttons that you can use. This is a cute little heart-shaped button that you can stitch directly onto the shoe. And you can certainly create the face, either a combination of using the embroidery file, or you might want to use a button. Just make sure that the button is stitched very securely, because you don't want children, young children, to get a hold of the buttons and that become a choking hazard. And also, I do want to mention that if you're in love with these bunnies and slippers as much as we are, yes, we are going to make, I am going to create other animals in the future, and we are going to have more slippers. And we've had lots of you request methods of making larger sizes, and you may be limited to a smaller hoop size. So we're in the process of updating our files, and we are going to provide stitch patterns, sewing patterns for you to trim the top pieces and the bottom pieces, and you will simply stitch them together on your sewing machine. And hopefully, watching this video, I will make another video tutorial on how to stitch them completely on a sewing machine, and maybe by hand. I'm going to include the face files and the ear files for stitching them on the embroidery machine. It's just going to be an update to the existing files, not a separate purchase. But you might want to use a combination of all the files and create them in the method that you prefer. But you will be able to create the larger sizes, the larger children's sizes and the adult sizes with the smaller hoops on your sewing machine. So I hope this video tutorial has been helpful, and I know that you will enjoy these slippers and everyone will love them as much as we do. Thanks for joining me.